Hey guys, welcome back to the show. We have a great guest today. She's an actress. She's a documentary filmmaker. She's doing so many cool things, and we're here to talk about all that with her. Please welcome Drena De Niro. How's it going?
Hi, good morning, good pre-noon.
Yeah, well, it's
Um,
still morning in my books. It's
yeah, it is.
Same. I still got the coffee going, so
I got
And
my
it's
my nice decaffeinated tea, chamomile tea, so I'm good to go.
I have my vitamin C water, so yeah, it's morning. Breakfast of champions.
yeah,
That's it.
gotta
That's it.
hydrate.
Yeah. So how's it going? So we're really excited to have you on. I know we've been speaking in the past for quite a bit.
Yeah.
I guess before we get to everything you're doing, I want to just kind of circle back to like the very beginning when you were growing up. I know you came from a background where like your parents were in the entertainment industry and stuff. And my first question to you is that did you always have this kind of this drive and this passion to be on camera or to have this kind of personality towards this stuff?
I actually did, and not so much like not so much because it was that thing about being on camera, but because when I was little, I didn't really register what my parents did. I knew technically they were actors, but they weren't famous. They were working actors at the time. So, and this is like in the late 70s and in LA, in New York. I feel like, I was always around actors and obviously my parents, they exposed me so much to films when I was little, because that was another thing. When I was a kid, like our parents didn't have really nannies, and the girls down the street babysat me, the two sisters. And, if my mom, or I'd go to my grandmother's, or I was always going to my grandparents. So you didn't really have babysitters. So like my parents would take me to see all types of movies. I remember being like, God, I must have been about 3 years old, going to my dad's movies that were like his first kind of big movies. One was called Hi Mom, and it was an independent film. The other one was a Brian De Palma film called Greetings. And I remember being really little and seeing this bizarre, it was like the first time seeing my dad in this film playing these characters. And it was obviously something I probably shouldn't have been seeing at my age, like all the movies that I went to see with my parents. So like, I think that like I always had that sort of showmanship personality, so to speak. Like I
Yeah,
always sort of, as a kid, I saw myself doing that. But I'm not sure all the time if that's just like environmental because it was all I saw, or I don't know if I would have, I feel like I would have had that personality no matter what business, but you never know.
Do you think like, if your parents weren't in that field, because you mentioned too, you said, if it was all about environmental being around it or if it was just in you
Yeah.
naturally. But like if you, looking back, if you didn't have parents like that, do you think you would have still wanted to pursue this industry?
I think I do because I was always a creative kid. I drew and painted. I was always just attracted to
Mhm.
creative stuff, definitely way before I could register that my grandparents were painters and my
Yeah.
mom could sing and act and my dad is this amazing actor. Like long before that, like I was always really I was a creative kid. I feel like I expressed myself a lot better in imaginary things. That's why acting was like really like it's funny because it was real. I was shockingly comfortable in
Mhm.
those positions, of like sometimes far more comfortable than I would be just say doing something like this or just being around a bunch of people. Like it was a
mm,
lot easier for me to just slip into something. And I don't know if that's like a gene. Yeah, I feel like that's, you're like that. Like, so in a way, I think that I would have gotten into something, and who knows, sometimes I wonder if maybe I would have been focused more on one thing, musically. That was like my second love. And, I wonder sometimes, like, if I had really focused on that, like sometimes I feel like when you grow up in this artistic background, you kind of become like a jack of all trades within the within the performing arts, like, because I was around music, I was around actors, I was around acting and plays, so I was always kind of physically expressing myself, or vocally expressing,
Okay, I gotcha. Yeah, that's because we wanted to ask you about that, because I saw too it said you were a DJ, you modeled, you did acting. Like,
yeah.
that's so, I could see like what you're saying,
Really
if
are
you're
a
always
jack
in that
of all
position.
trades.
So there's good and bad to that. So like in a lot of ways it's great, but sometimes I feel that, I spent a huge portion of my time sort of floating in between stuff, and that's fine. And then like now that like you have kids and you get older, and it's just like, oh, I'm tired. Like
Yeah,
like, what is my schedule? I want to know,
Yeah,
but
true.
you know what it comes down to, I think, because we were talking about this too, me and Mike, with another guest as well, about you may have a certain goal and you may start somewhere, but the journey in between can take different routes, and you kind of have to roll with it. You have to learn to adapt with how things go. That's like that goes for just anything in life. Look at people like, this is gonna be a really, really weird example, but look at like the caveman, right? How they discovered fire and stuff. You really think they wanted to discover fire? They just went out there and they just kind of had to use the resources in front of them. So again, like if you had a love for, if your singing was your second passion, for example, right? Let's say you're doing acting, but let's say like, a few months it was slow with that. Maybe, who knows, you may wanted to pick up something with the singing and trying to pursue that. And who knows, maybe that would have taken off too. Like, we don't know unless we try things in life too. I really admire how Mike said you were a DJ. That is really cool, because, me, Drena, I love this like retro stuff. And I have to say, like when you were doing DJing, that must have been a time when like that your music was popular, all that stuff. You had to like Night at the Roxbury.
I mean, it was really amazing time. That's the thing. I feel like most of my friends too who grew up here, like we just feel like we had it the worst, because it was still so much fun. And then by the time we were adults, like Giuliani shut everything down. They cleaned up New York and was like, hey, wait a minute. Like, it's over already. But like, it was a really good time. I think like the 90s was just like an amazing time, because like New York was like, there were still clubs, there were still, you could still be an artist, and you could be a young artist and live in New York City. You weren't being priced out. So, you could be someone. I mean, I knew people that like we had known each other since we were children, still living in, running into people. I mean, that's the thing. I think that like New Yorkers are some of the people I know more than anyone that still really stay in touch, because, or have like the longest longevity of like, I knew them for 30 years or whatever, because it was like really, our parents were already kind of more off the beaten track, like village kids, already came from kind of parents that were kind of defectors of the normal way to go in life or whatever. So we already came from that. And like, growing up, it was just super fun. Like DJing, I got into just because I had friends that were DJs. It was all about turntables. They had MTV raps. Everything was about like hip hop and turntables and this and that. And then I got one turntable for one birthday, then another one. And then I got myself my mixer. And I literally there was a club called Mars that opened up. And that was I just sent in a tape. Like, and so like, I remember a friend helping me mix this tape and telling me like, don't put this song, don't put Big Fun, or like, you know, like some like, don't put that song, that's played out, put these and this and this. And I made this tape, and in those days it was like, oh yeah, hey, another girl DJ, you know, she models it, she's, you know, got this name, whatever, she's a girl about town, great. And then the next thing I knew, I was DJing in this like big club with equipment, and you know, and then it just started DJing like everywhere, and I ended up, and since I loved that a lot more than being like a okay model, like I was an okay model, but I was like a much better, you know, DJ or did other stuff. So I started then getting into doing music for shows and making my time a little bit more worthwhile.
Did that come before you started acting then, or were you acting at all during?
I was going to school in those days. I was still studying. At that time I was studying at Joan McIntosh. There were so many different acting places, acting schools, Stella Adler, and I think I was studying with this actress Joan McIntosh, this teacher Joan McIntosh, and Larry Moss in LA. So I was studying, but I wasn't I hadn't done anything like a real part as an actress. Like I had done stuff when I was a kid. I was like in The Godfather, you know, for a little while, a couple minutes or something, really? When I was a baby.
Really? You were?
Yeah.
What part, or what was the?
I think the part, they're all coming in the train and with the families, and the families are all coming off the train when they arrive, and he's holding me. There's a gaggle of kids.
Oh wait, Godfather 2, right?
Yeah, Godfather Part 2. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, that's my favorite Godfather.
Yeah.
It's a good one.
Yeah.
Wow.
That is it.
No,
That's
cool.
crazy. Even going back to the DJing too, and how you at that time were preferring that more than modeling too. Is that because you were in an environment, going back to like how you were very personable? Is that because the environment was around people, you felt like more of a connection like that? Because modeling, I guess, is very just like, it's just more, you know, there's a crew, but
yeah,
it felt like more of a lively experience. Is that why?
Yeah, the modeling was I loved the modeling. Was amazing as far as it was so great to travel. You know, and I made incredible friendships. I had a great time. I love designers. I love fashion. So that part was, you know, I was really grateful for that time and that ability to be able to do stuff like it opened me up to a lot of experiences and stuff. But you know, I knew that I wasn't that right kind of personality. And I just didn't, I knew that like I physically wasn't that kind of a striking beauty. Like I could walk it, you know, I could walk the way I should walk and do this. You could put stuff on me. But like, you know, it's like, I'm sure if I looked like some other models, I would have been like, hey, you know, this is good. But like, yeah, it was very clear. Like I did a lot of shows, a lot of runway stuff, but I just wasn't that kind of personality. I wasn't,
really,
you know, I sort of would go off onto my own stuff. Yeah. Oh, definitely. It's, you know, and it's a business, you know, and no matter what people think, no matter how much fun you think these girls are having, you know, they're handling their business, and
it's a lot of work.
It is. But yeah, so there's like the good stuff, but you know, and also it's really the kind of career you have to have a backup plan. And I knew that.
How was it like working for Giorgio Armani? Because that had to be a good gig for sure.
Yeah,
that was a great gig. A dear friend of mine who now, he hired me to work with Emporio Armani when they were first doing the kind of younger, more sport kind of line, Emporio Armani. And I had like modeled, I had done some of Armani's shows, but they hired me as a consultant when they were really trying to launch Emporio Armani. It was in New York, and they wanted sort of kind of trendy, you know, whoever's out there, the people of the minute. And I was hired as a consultant to help with events, to do the music, curate, you know, the stores and the shows, and I would also walk in the show. So I was sort of like this like muse ambassador for the company, would help get the, do the big projects and events and everything. And it was an amazing experience. Like, he is just, to work with a man like that and really see that old school talent and know-how, like, no matter what you see, all him and this and that, there's someone who, like, when you're looking at a dress with like 20,000 hand sewn beads and the creativity in that, and just, it was pretty amazing. I mean, I really, I learned a lot, and I had like amazing experiences, meeting Sophia Loren and people like, I mean, just sort of legends and that whole, and it was a great time in the fashion world. It was a really, exciting time. Versace was doing his thing. There was Galliano, there was just so much creativity coming out of everybody. So musically, fashion wise, art wise.
Mm-hmm. And I know a lot of like the brands you're saying too, and extras and stuff, like that's all kind of Italian inspired too. And I know you traveled to Italy, quite a bit. So how do you think that kind of plays into the part of like, do you think it helped really build Armani and all these brands and stuff like that? Or is that kind of how he got inspired to make things? Like, how does that play?
I think that, it was so smart, because what we would do is we would say, basically give reports on what is everybody wearing in New York? What is the thing now? And, so sometimes it was like, it could be, I don't know, hot leather shorts with opaque stockings and, parkas, all, and it was sort of like, what was, because street fashion was so influential. It definitely, like, in the 90s and early 2000s, it was so influential. Like, you identified yourself by, I remember like being on a train, and I was sitting with a friend of mine, and we were just like busting on this guy across from us, because like he had like whatever Reebok sneakers and Adidas socks and Nike shorts. And we were, that was just like, dude, like, how could you? But like, so we would give him these ideas, and then they would reproduce it. And so maybe he'd do a parka in sequins with fur, whatever, and then someone's wearing it on the runway. So there was a lot of like, it was a sort of a mutual sort of beneficial thing, and I would wear, he liked having younger women, sometimes more curvy women, more different, wearing his stuff, because say you kind of would think of Armani, like you think of maybe, like famous actresses or, whatever, Michelle Pfeiffer or Glenn Close or whatever. But then like, like say if I went to an event and I'd wear an Armani thing, of course I would find like the one thing that nobody else had the guts to wear. And then everyone would be like, who is that? I'm like, Armani. They're like, where do you, like, oh my God. I'm like, I'll find it. Like, I'll dig it up. Yeah.
That is awesome.
We sell Italian merch and stuff like that. And I feel like it's always hard to find ideas and designs. And even like with girls, it's tough because sometimes like the ladies' cuts shirts are tighter, but not all like girls want that. And then sometimes you put a looser fit one, but then it's crew neck. They like the V-neck. And then some people don't like the more exposed stuff.
Right.
So a large portion of our customer base is girls, but I feel like it's hard to really cater to it. Like what would you recommend me to do to like research and design and figure that kind of stuff out?
Yeah, I think that it's like, you have to just go really look at what you first start with, what you think works. Like go to the designers, go to like, get inspiration from the people, like whatever catches your eye. And like, it could, I don't know, Balenciaga or this or that, whatever your, or as far as Italian, sometimes I do a lot of, I'll go retro. Like I'll do a lot of research on, I'll get an idea, like I'm going somewhere. All right, I want to kind of have a 60s Anna Mignani, Monica Vitti vibe. And I will straight up research pictures of her
Okay.
and go to like a hairstylist, like, and what, you know, and just so, and you know what I mean? And it's like, because you have to, yeah, you can't please everyone.
Yeah.
So you just try to go with like, what is a universally like.
But you're not afraid to go
you
back
know.
to, like you said, like the 60s or something, or do
I'm
you want to
really,
try to
yeah,
stick
I
with
mean,
the trends?
I'm really, no, I kind of don't think, I mean, sometimes I think the trends are great, but like, I definitely, I see so many people stick with trends that they should not be doing. And it's like, just because it's okay on one girl doesn't make it okay on, you know, all 6 of your friends, you know, because you see a lot of that, like, especially in the city, just like, wow, all of you
I
decided to
see it
wear
all the
the
time. I see it all the time.
same thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, and that's, and it's funny because some of my friends, you know, we talk about that. I mean, when we were like in our 20s, when we were growing in our teens, growing up, I mean, you kind of you wanted to follow trends, but it was really about kind of being different. Like you didn't, like even the music in clubs, it was the opposite. They wouldn't be caught dead playing something that is played on the radio. Here, you know, you go to a club now, you know, you wouldn't, I mean, it's all they play is like, you know, what's also on the radio. So, you
Yeah.
know, it's just different. It's just different aesthetics. So like at that time, you know, hip hop was still pretty underground. It wasn't, you know, wasn't really widely played. You know, there'd be like maybe 4 hip hop artists to every like 20 that,
Okay.
you know, were coming out.
Well, even like, well, I know nowadays, like, you know, you have like, look at like The Weeknd or like Bruno Mars, Anderson .Paak, like the Silk Sonic duo that they have, which obviously like amazing. Like you have Bruno Mars and Anderson .Paak doing like the 70s kind of stuff, you know,
Yeah.
the door up, yeah, like,
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
And then you have The
It's
Weeknd
great.
doing like, then The Weeknd doing like 80s stuff, bringing that back. But I remember when I was talking on the phone, you mentioned something really important to me that stood out. You mentioned how you really admire and you're really drawn towards the younger generation now because of how we operate and how we're so on the ball with things and everything. But I really like how you brought up the fact that back then, how it was more expressive and more like, you know, you had like, you could just kind of do whatever you want. You didn't have to always kind of go with what's trending and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Kind of, you know, where that 90s and 80s creativity kind of got lost in the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like, I guess, you know, what are in your opinion, like, what are some of the things that, like, what are some pros, I guess, to the generation now? What are some of the cons that you're finding? Because again, like me personally, I'll say what I think, like a lot of the pros, like what you said, we're quick with technology. We're very like hands-on. We're very like, we have all this social media. So everything's so accessible. I just think, my opinion, the con is that we're missing what's right in front of us. And I'm going to quote Ferris Bueller, you know, life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop to look around once in a while, you can miss it. So I guess that's something that kind of resonates with you too, because you did all these things and now it's like different, right? So what are your thoughts?
I think like, I totally agree with you. And I mean, but even like that, you even know that quote because you really realize it before you know it. It's like time is moving so fast, and it really surprises me how much. And I mean, one part of me is like, hey, if that's really what makes people happy, but how much people are so focused on projecting what the event is and projecting what's happening rather than experiencing what's happening. You know, you see it on the streets. You see, I mean, imagine like whoever thought someone would die taking a selfie, you know, falling off a cliff, you know, that like, that wasn't even ever a thought of like the
wait, that actually happened?
Oh yeah. It's happened more than once. Oh, there's been like several casualties, I think, at the Grand Canyon. Not several, but there's been more than 2. Of like, it was, there was something on the news recently.
There's still something. Well, even now, what was it like I think it was like last year. I forgot when it happened, and I hate even bringing this up because I don't want to give her the satisfaction, like the publicity about it. But like, this girl threw a chair off a building. I don't know if you guys heard about this in Toronto.
No.
and like right off the highway, and like thank God no one got hurt, but like she did it just to get popularity,
Yeah.
and now she blew up, and now she's big.
Yeah, see, that stuff is like such an offense to art. Like, I find that the great thing about the generation now is that you have the technology and you've grown up around it, so that you know how to really use it to your benefit and how to get something done. I mean, you know, get like an idea across so much faster than, you know, the way like an idea like would have gone. And in that way, I think it's kind of great, because I think that it's like you can really keep busy, and, you know, and I just find that like it's a very, like, I have an 18-year-old son, and in certain ways, I mean, I feel like, you know, it's just crazy, because he's very, very computer savvy. He's very talented in technology. And I see how we're so, like, it's difficult, because sometimes I'm talking with someone who, like, I have to like argue against Google. Like, it did not, if Google doesn't endorse it or say it,
Yeah.
it's not true. And that, you know, and that stuff like drives me nuts. But then sometimes I see how much kind of smarter and like young people do, like, it's more my age group that acts like complete jackasses on social media than yours, I find, because I don't feel like my generation knows how to handle it.
I don't
Where
know.
I feel like, well, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sure, no, exactly.
I was gonna say
Anybody
there's enough
brings
people
out the
all ages
worst
on
in a
there.
lot of people.
Yeah.
But like, that's the thing, is that,
But I get what you're saying.
like,
Yeah.
it's just very weird, like, because, you know, there was a time where, like, for me, I grew up, privacy was very valued, you know, it was a very valued thing. It was not like you kind of talk quietly in public. um Everything that, like, I feel like the culture now says you're supposed to do was considered like really desperate and weird and tacky. So I find it really funny how blunt people, younger people, can be with information.
Yeah.
And it's
I,
kind of sweet though, you know, but it's like, yeah, like, it's just so different, because
yeah,
I'm
but
still like of the, oh, what were you gonna say?
I was gonna say a lot of stuff too. There's like street smarts and book smarts though too. So that's like I feel like you got to have a nice in between. You
You
can't be.
really have to have a, yeah, or things like that. I mean, you know, now, like, I notice, like, say, on the street, and other people, especially maybe like you know, where you were from, but especially here, there was always a code of like personal space, and you did not cross it on the street. You just
Yeah,
knew,
it's
do
like an
not
unwritten
get too
rule.
close. And now it's really funny, because I really see, and I don't know if it's also with COVID, but I think it's like the phones and this, people come up. I just now have like stopped having the urge to like square off. Like, I just now used to, like, it's just somebody standing like right
Ugh,
next to me at my shoulder, like that. Or,
yeah.
you know, or like, we're gonna walk down the street next to each other, you know, like, it's just, that stuff is still really strange to me. You know, I feel like there was a lot more freedom in the past to kind of do stuff and not worrying about triggering people, and, you know, all that kind of stuff. And I mean, there's, you know, there's good and bad to that. It's a really difficult thing, because like, you see the reactions, or this canceling people, you know, we didn't
Yeah.
have to worry about that. We didn't do
Mhm.
stuff like thinking, you know, I mean, you got canceled, you didn't see it coming, and it was like, you know, like
Yeah.
it would be all over the newspapers for a while, so people forgot,
Hmm.
Well,
you
even like
know.
even for example too, like, well, like you mentioned back then, like you kind of you could do something and not get like repercussions for it. Like you were able to be more free about certain things. And you directed a documentary, Girls and Dolls, and that was a very like I watched and I loved it, by the way.
Mm.
That was a very, like, to some people it can be very controversial, and it was a
Mhm.
very bold documentary, and I really give you props for making something like that. And you know, I think it's I was telling you on the phone, like, that's a documentary like that's relevant back then and today, and
Mhm.
will continue to be very relevant going forward. And like, I guess, what was your inspiration behind that? And like, why does it have to do a lot about your admiration for like the nostalgia of like the 80s and 90s and stuff too? Or did that come from something within? Like, where did that come from?
That was actually, I knew that woman, Robin Newland. She's a fashion stylist. And that came from a trip that we were on in Puerto Rico. And we were doing a job, some type of shoot, and we were staying with a friend. And I was in her room with her, and we were there with one of the shoe designer, and she had this bag, and I noticed, and she's talking away and everything. And I saw this bag, and I saw these like doll legs sticking out and things, all this doll stuff. And I was like, hey, what's that? And she was like, oh, those are my babies. And then she was like pulling it out, and it was like these dolls of hers. And she had the clothes, a whole bag of these crazy Barbies that kind of looked a little strange. And I realized because she was showing me some of them, it had, one head, like a Barbie princess head on a Marilyn Monroe body or something, or like a basketball player's head on some other doll's body. And she started telling me this whole story about these dolls. And we just were so fascinated. We never sat down, and we just stood over the bed, all this junk all over the bed, clothes and stuff. And we were all like, listening to the story about how she had, rescued, like she had this doll that she loved so much, and that like when a building got on fire, she like, her parents, her mother said like, leave everything, we gotta go. And she just ripped this doll's head off and put it in her mouth. And then later at the hotel, like at the single residence occupancy, the short-term occupancy hotel in Times Square or wherever it was at that time, she, took another body from some of the dolls, and she attached it, and then just started getting into that. And then and I just felt like, this is so amazing. I really want to do a story of it. And I wasn't even at that time thinking about her sexuality or how all of that was going to play, or race and her feelings about race, how that was going to play into the documentary, until we kind of had it set up to finally shoot the interviews. And just what came out with her mom and her cousin Dwayne, and the things she was talking about, like, it was really incredible, because the whole thing, and she calls it right there. She says, I feel like a lot of, like, I worked out all my issues about sexuality through these dolls, because she would make these dolls like live out, oh, this is the gay couple. That's why she was so into the guy dolls, their bodies and everything. And it really, she like worked out, for someone who wasn't exposed to this, very Anglo, blue blood, WASP, white culture, that she just like, was someone who looked at that like, through, the TV or here or there. And she was so fascinated with this culture that she lived right next to, but was never welcome to be a part of. And then, she worked all of this kind of stuff out with these dolls. And I just loved, the full story, like, and then she ends up, and she's still doing it. Like, she does these art installations of her dolls, and like has this, these great, these huge pictures of like her dolls in these like scenes, relaxing or in cars, or
that is awesome.
It's so, and I just love it, because like that's about survival. It's not about being a victimhood. And these people were victimized, and they experienced every kind of abuse, every kind of racism, every kind of like, they didn't get any breaks, and yet got through it. And it made them, and really it like, it's like people like her that ushered the way in for people now, you know, to be trans and be open and be able to get employment and be treated, you know, with the deserved respect. It was really, I feel like that kind of generation of the 90s and 2000s that finally ushered that in to it be, you know, being a commonplace thing, you know.
So I love the music in it. I love the way it was shot. It had all the elements of who Drena De Niro. Do you think you're gonna end up doing more behind the scenes stuff, filmmaking and everything? Like, what do you think's next for you?
That is definitely the short-term goal. I love documentary is an amazing medium. I definitely want to direct more, and I've been working a lot more on my writing and just being in a position, just being freer to, I mean, that was what was so amazing about Girls and Dolls for me, was that it was sort of my breaking out from the actual business of being an actress, you know, and doing this and doing that. And finally just being like, I want to just let my mind go and do what comes, you know, what comes naturally without any kind of limitations, and that creatively at least. And so yeah, that's what I do love about the actual filmmaking process, as opposed to just being in front of the camera.
Well, that's awesome. Well, again, you've done so many cool things, and we were happy to have you on. I know you even done. We're gonna put your IMDb down below too, but you've done like even like A Star Is Born, Joy. You've done so many great things besides just film and modeling and DJing.
Thank you.
But yeah, props to you on everything you're doing. We really support you. And actually,
thank you so much.
No problem. Before we end up, I mean, you want to plug in your social media handles? I know also too that you're part of this organization called Kagano. We're gonna put that in the description too. So
great,
plug whatever you need to plug in, and yeah, we'll support it.
Yeah, I mean, you know, Drena De Niro at, you know, IG is Drena De Niro. I'm just sort of trying to really get more involved in the social media.
Yeah, I feel like it's a full-time
job. We're gonna
job.
get you there.
Yeah. And and right now just like stay tuned. There's some stuff I can't quite talk about it just yet, but okay. You'll be hearing and seeing more of me, and yeah.
Okay.
Thanks so much.
Love it. Yeah, you got to keep us posted on all that for sure too.
Thanks, Drena. Appreciate it. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much. And I'll talk to you soon. Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye, Michael.
Bye.
Okay, bye.